Hey, it's Derick Gant, and I am the host of the 24K Life podcast. We are excited because we have somebody that is going to teach us some things we have no idea about. I mean, we really don't talk about it. It's probably taboo to talk about. The people that have experienced some of these things don't like talking about it. But we have Amanda Blackwood on. She is a prolific author of a series of books called Grow from the Dark. She also has a syndicated radio show in Australia, Grow from the Dark. And you're going to see that she was interviewed by the Chicago Tribune because she has it posted in her background, letting everybody know that I am not qualified to be interviewing her, but she's just graced us with some time so that we can help our 24K Life audience grow, learn, and improve where they are and where they're going. Amanda, welcome.
Hi, Derick. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm so excited about this.
I am too. When we spoke, and you already know, I just do these little preview interviews to make sure people can communicate. They have some charisma and all that kind of fun stuff. And man, I thought I was going to miniature school because you told me some things briefly that blew me away. I said, don't tell me anymore. Save it for the show because I want to learn. I want our community to learn. And we're excited about having you here, our first syndicated radio personality. What? Look at you. Look at you. So what do you want us to know? Not about that yet, about you, right? Tell us about you. What's your world like? Where you live? Where are you from? What's your average day like? Just tell us just a little bit, whatever you think's appropriate.
I live in Denver, Colorado with my amazing husband of about a year and a half now, and our count them six cats. Before I met my husband, I was happy being the crazy cat lady and wasn't expecting to have a relationship. He had two cats of his own. So between the two of us, we have a petting zoo.
Wow.
It's absolutely gorgeous out here in Colorado, but I have moved 43 times in my life before finally finding a place I could call home.
Are you kidding? We could do a podcast on three things that you've already said. Number one, your amazing husband that you never expected to find. That's a show all by itself. So many women have given up on finding a great relationship. So we could do a show on that. The cat lady comment, we could do a show on that. And obviously we could do a show on the 43 moves, man. That is insane. Are you kidding me? Were you like a army brat or something? Your parents were in the armed services or something?
My dad was Air Force, and we did move around quite a bit every few years when I was a kid. In fact, I was actually born in Germany, and I've moved all over the place. But a lot of the moving that I did was when I was an adult and trying to get away from the bad people.
Really? As an adult?
As an adult.
So, they don't even know what we're talking about yet because I didn't say anything. I just said it's not. People don't like to talk about it. So we're going to talk about human trafficking. And that's just a mouthful all by itself. I mean, the most that I know about it are the churches that I've attended or been participating in that had some fundraisers for it. I've got some warnings that I've heard, like when they're, at least in our local area in Ohio, they're like, be careful going to the mall because, their van pulls up and swoops you up, or you go to your car and there's somebody behind you or something. So you have some lifelong insights into this human trafficking. You obviously have a very popular radio show because it's syndicated. You have a book series. And so tell us tell us your story.
So the first thing that people always ask me when I admit that I am a survivor of human trafficking is always, oh my gosh, how old were you? And that's because we have this preconceived notion here in the US that trafficking only happens to children. Mm-hmm. They think that it's going to be the stranger danger warnings that my generation grew up with in the 80s and 90s, where you're going to these school assemblies and they're telling you, don't get in the car with strangers. And while I can still agree with that advice, those are probably not traffickers. They are far more likely to be serial killers or serial rapists or pedophiles. They're probably not traffickers.
Okay.
The majority of people who are trafficked by people they already know and trust and love, and people who have a sense of authority over their lives. So a lot of times, if it is children, it's parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, boyfriends and girlfriends, those kinds of people who they're already familiar with. And
So let me interrupt you.
yep,
So because we just don't think of it that way. So by definition of traffic, you're saying parents, grandparents, people that they know and love say, "Here, I'm going to abuse you, and I'm going to pass you on to someone else to abuse you." And then, is that what you mean?
that's exactly it.
Holy cow!
So if you break down the definition, according to the Department of Homeland Security, the definition of human trafficking is the use of force, fraud, or coercion to obtain labor or sex acts from another person.
Mhm.
So if you notice, there's no mention of moving a person from one place to another, even though we correlate
Exactly.
trafficking as a transportation mode. It
Okay.
has nothing to do with transportation. You can traffic somebody out of your own home. You also notice there's no mention of money.
Yeah.
So while there's a huge overlap in the areas of human smuggling and human trafficking and prostitution and human trafficking, one does not equal the other. All three of these things are pretty intense issues that all need to be addressed.
Right.
It's important to go into this conversation understanding that there's a difference. I was never a prostitute, and I was never taken across state or international borders against my will.
Okay. So what? I mean, you've told me when we were one-on-one, and I didn't want to hear anymore. So, but now we're talking to the 24K Life community. We're talking to the world. We're talking to our social spectrum. So, what happened to you?
Well, it starts out quite young in my life, even though I wasn't trafficked early on.
Mhm.
I was molested at about 4 years old. At that time, the person who molested me was my brother. He was an older brother, but only by about 3 years. So to this day, I still don't blame him for what happened because at 7 years old, he shouldn't have known the things that he was doing.
Mm,
Somebody else showed him
okay.
things. I don't know who it was, and neither does he, and he has no memory. Last I talked to him, he has no memory of our childhood, but emphatically denies this, of course.
Right.
I don't blame him. But at the time, I learned very quickly that I couldn't tell anybody. Nobody believed me. I didn't know how to define or explain what it was that had happened. And I knew that whatever it was wrong. And I thought that I would get in trouble for that. And the penalties for
Wow.
getting in trouble when I was a kid were pretty severe. So my
Mhm.
mother was emotionally and mentally rather abusive. And my father used to spank us with the belt pretty regularly. I mean,
Okay.
I'm a redhead. I was a brat. It kind of goes hand in hand.
Okay. Okay.
So a lot of those spankings I deserved, but I didn't want that one, and I was afraid that that's what would happen.
Right.
So I
Especially
grew
when
up
you
with
hadn't done anything wrong and you couldn't voice it, and it's you just knew it was not it was not right. Whatever was happening.
right, exactly. It scared me. I
Mhm.
had lost any kind of sense of control at that point. So I grew up with this constant feeling of I can't trust anybody, I can't tell anybody. I was molested again at 12 and at 13 by an uncle, again at 14, again at 15 by a kid in school, raped at 17. And by the time I was 18 years old, I was living on my own and floating from one place to another in a state away from my family because I just couldn't wait to get away from them.
Okay.
I started running away from home at about 15.
Wow. Understandably.
Yeah, it was a tough road. Nobody understood the road that I was traveling because I couldn't tell anybody and I didn't know how to tell anybody.
Right.
Yeah,
And you kept this completely to yourself up to this point, 15 to moving out of the house and being on your own at 18?
right. I kept it all to myself until recently.
Really?
I didn't tell anybody about all the stuff that had happened.
And now you're telling everybody.
Now I'm telling everybody.
I
And I've got
love it.
so many reasons for that too.
Hmm.
So at 18 years old, when I was moving from one place to another and crashing on people's couches and just looking for anywhere to be able to stay so I wouldn't actually be out on the streets homeless, I was homeless living with other people. I
Okay.
have a charismatic personality. I can kind of win people over.
Hmm.
And that's what I was doing at that age. And to
Okay.
some degree, I was using myself to do this. So I was using my body.
Okay.
Rather than looking for healthy relationships, I was using what other people had already taken away from me and said to myself that if I give this away for what it is that I need, then they can't hurt me by taking it away from me instead.
Yes, you maintain some semblance of control.
Yeah, exactly. And I've always had this need for control, and I think it's because that control was taken away from me at such a young age.
Right.
So even when I was going through all of this stuff, I refused to turn to drugs or alcohol until my very final time being trafficked. And now when I say my final time being trafficked, I was trafficked 3 different times in my life. And the average number of times for somebody to be trafficked is actually 7.
Wow.
So it becomes this cycle of living in kind of a domestic abuse situations.
So if we could take a quick time out and explain to me, because I'm don't understand or not clear. You said 3 times in your life, the average is 7. You've explained 3 instances of bad times. Were you trafficked when you were 4, or you were just abused when you were 4? When were these other times up to this point that you've mentioned, this part of your story of your life, that you were trafficked, meaning that you were passed along? Was it the uncles that passed you amongst each other? Did they know your dad, your mom? Did they know and they okayed it, or what? What are you saying?
So that's kind of the strange part about my story. Only 1/4 of all victims of human trafficking are under the age of 18. I was trafficked the first time at 18, the second time at 19, in a completely different state in another part of the country, and the third time I was trafficked at 31 years old.
Wow.
But the reason I had to start it out with the molestation and the
I understand that. I understand the background information.
Right. You get used to the people who say they love you are the ones that hurt you. And if they don't hurt you, that means they don't love you. They don't genuinely care about you. They're just being nice.
Wow. So you're expecting them to hurt you because that's what love looks like at that point.
Right. Right.
Wow.
That's what my life had always been.
Okay.
So I started trying to kind of dig into psychology a little bit on my own at this point, trying to figure out, why does this kind of stuff happen? Mm-hmm. Why does this continually happen to me?
And what age are you trying to figure this out?
18.
Okay.
Still pretty young, but I wanted to know. I was curious. I've always had that kind of curious brain.
Mm-hmm.
So the man that I was living with at the time, he was twice my age. He was in his 30s. I was 18. He kind of made me feel like I was always welcome there. He absolutely loved me. He would do anything for me as long as I was accommodating to him and did what he asked. Okay. And for a while, I didn't mind this. We were in a relationship and he asked me to cook dinner. I would cook dinner. If he asked me to get up and go grab the remote control for him, I would do it. I was basically his lapdog, but
right.
I was all right with that. I had a place to stay. I was safe and dry in Arizona.
Okay.
I was very dry in Arizona. That's another story. Until one day, his buddy came over and said, "Hey, I'm going to go to Vegas for my birthday. Do you want to go?" And he said, "I can't. I've got some work to do, but I have a gift for you." And they asked me to leave the room. So I left the room because that's what I was told to do. When they called me back into the room, they proposed this trip offer to me where I would get an all expenses paid trip to Las Vegas, Nevada. At 18 years old, I knew I couldn't gamble in any of the casinos, but when I was a kid running away, I had ridden the roller coaster at the top of the New York building, and yes. I loved that roller coaster. I could not wait to go back to Vegas to ride this stinking roller coaster, right?
Right.
They had a great arcade, all kinds of cool stuff for kids. So I agreed. Absolutely. I want to go to Vegas. I want to go ride that roller coaster. I'm going to go have some fun. And they took me to Vegas. Well, he, my boyfriend's buddy.
Right.
And as soon as we got there, he had my ID and everything for us to be able to get on the plane. So he had my only identification. We got to the hotel and I saw him slip them some cash. And then explained to them that I was allowed to get room service once a day, but when they brought it up, they had to knock on the door and leave. before I could go out and get it.
Okay.
I didn't know what any of this meant. I was still a relatively innocent 18-year-old kid, even though so much bad stuff had already happened to me at that point. I'm still thinking, I'm here to have fun.
Now, do you know at this point that your fee for this all expense paid trip, or you don't know yet what the price is?
I have no idea.
Okay, go ahead.
I didn't know until we got up to the hotel room. And I remembered my boyfriend telling me that I needed to be just as accommodating to his buddy as I was to him. Whatever he asked of me, I was to do. And for 52 hours, he would go gambling, he would rape me, and then he would sleep. And then he would go gambling, he would rape me, and he would sleep. I wasn't allowed to leave the room because I didn't have my own room key. I wouldn't be able to get back in. And if I left, he had my only identification still. So the options were to put up with what I was going through for this 52 hours in Las Vegas in the Hard Rock, or was it the Hard Rock? Yeah, it was the Hard Rock Casino Hotel. It's gone now. Mm-hmm. But it apparently had a reputation back then.
Really?
Yeah. A reputation that a lot of people weren't even aware of.
Right. That you could slip somebody some money and they would look the other way on you being held captive.
Yep. You can have your dirty little secrets if you just have enough capital to make it happen.
Wow. And
this continued to happen for the whole 52 hours when I allowed it to happen and participated. And I do still consider it rape, even though I didn't say the word no, because I didn't have the opportunity or the choice to say no.
Right.
But if we go back to that definition of human trafficking, the use of force, fraud, or coercion to obtain labor or sex acts.
Right. And you were coerced.
Yep. So we got back to Arizona and I took what I had and I split. I floated around for a while and moved several more times before finding myself in Arkansas. Got a job at a horse farm. Got married to a different man who was twice my age. And that man turned out to be abusive. He didn't traffic me, but he was terribly abusive and jealous. I had this issue with not wanting to do what people told me to do.
Right.
So when he told me that I wasn't allowed to wear tank tops or shorts ever again because that was only for him to see, that was exactly what I wore.
Gotcha.
And it got really bad there for a little while. So I left him. I stayed in the guest house on the horse farm for a little bit. And I fell out of the hayloft and tore some cartilage in my knee really bad. When this happened, the plan was to send me down to Florida to go and stay with my dad's mother so that I could get my knee surgery done and get back on my feet.
Okay.
Things happened when I was on my way there that I wasn't aware of. Apparently,
now, is he taking you, or who's?
No, I left him.
Okay, so you left him.
Yeah.
Okay, and so you're going to grandma's in Florida.
Right.
Okay.
And I got to Daytona Beach. I was at the bus station. It was 10:30 at night. And I called my grandmother on the phone and said, "Hey, I'm here. I'm ready to be picked up." Apparently, my family had called her and said, "If you take her in, we'll never speak to you again."
Wow.
So I was left on the curb at the Daytona Beach bus station with $5 in my pocket and nowhere to go. I had been so sufficiently managing myself when I was homeless in Arizona by staying with all these other people.
Right.
But those were people that I got to meet and know. And here it was 10:30 at night in one of the most dangerous parts of Florida in this particular section of Daytona Beach. And I'm lost, I'm alone, and I'm scared. And I did what anybody in that kind of position would do. And I sat on the curb and I just bawled my eyes out.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah. So a young couple came and found me, a boy and girl. Came and found me and said, "Hey, we've got a place, we'll put you up for a few days, help you to get back on your feet. You can stay with us as long as you need to while you're looking for a job. When you find a new job and you're on your feet, you can continue staying with us or you can move on. Whatever you need to do, just come and stay with us until you get on your feet." What they really meant was, come and stay with us until we find the highest bidder.
OMG. So they were out prowling for somebody that was in a bad way.
Right. I don't believe I was the first one that they had done this to. I do believe that the girl was oblivious to what the boy was doing.
Oh, really? So she didn't know what was going on.
Right. She was only 15. He was in his 20s. Should have been some red flags there, but I didn't see them because she looked a little bit older than that. And, I was still just 19 myself. I was still basically a kid.
Exactly.
How do you see through these kinds of people? He seemed like a safe person because he's got her with him.
Right. And you know what? And we've seen that obviously on the national stage with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, with her going out to get the girls and, hey, I'm a nice woman and women are supporting women and we wouldn't do anything to hurt another woman and get in the car or show up at this address. Now we're aware of these women.
Right. And there's really not well-known serial killer teams that are male-female teams too. I mean, we automatically assume that somebody is safe because they're a woman.
Right.
Or the man that they're with is safe because they're with a woman. And this is such an incorrect thought process.
Mm-hmm.
People can be dangerous regardless of what gender they might be.
Are these stories in your books?
Yes, they are. So let's say when I ran away from home as a 17-year-old kid, that was called The Miller Miles. And this book is all about the adventure of 4 kids piling up in a 2-seater car and going from northern Utah down to Arizona. And I was dumped off on the side of the road down there.
Wow.
When I got back to Utah, I got revenge in the most wicked way possible. And I tell people all the time, this is a true story of dishonest revenge.
I can't wait. Don't tell us. Let's make everybody go buy it and read it. I'll put the Amazon links in the bio.
This one is about my time in Florida. Detailed Pieces of a Shattered Dream was my first book that I published under my name.
Okay.
This goes into a lot more detail because I'm going to kind of make that one a little bit shorter by saying that once they had me and I was locked up for 23 and a half hours, no food, no water, no bathroom facilities for that time, I got out because I watched MacGyver.
No way. Are you serious?
Absolutely. I have written to Richard Dean Anderson thanking him for saving my life. And although I have never heard back from the man, I have to believe he knows.
Absolutely. He knows. And now the world knows because we're telling them thanks for the creativity. Wow.
Yep, absolutely.
And so the last time was you were 31. So we know you got out because you're here and you're telling the story, but we're glad that story, it was only 23 hours and you got out. It wasn't 52. And so the last one, 31, what happened?
I tried out 7 years before that. I tried out a dating app.
Okay.
It was called Hot or Not. I don't know
Hot
if you ever...
or Not.
Hot or Not. It was
Never heard of
hotornot.com. You would rate people based on their photos, and then once you rated them, you could see a little bit of their profile.
Okay.
And see if this was somebody you wanted to communicate with, and then you could message back and forth. It was like a precursor to Tinder. Very shallow.
Okay.
Absolutely based on physical appearance first. Had nothing to do with who your personality was.
Okay.
There were a lot of hookups back in the day on that one.
I bet.
But I got to know some people from the app and got to know who they were as people, not just, he's cute.
Mm-hmm.
One of them I married. He was a stunt man in the movies.
Really?
And another one I became pen pals with for 7 years. But the stunt man, our marriage didn't last more than a year and a half because he had some jealousy issues. He was also 5'1" and he had Napoleonic syndrome.
Ooh.
But he was a stunt man for teenagers in the films.
Oh my God, that's a continual ego blow. But go ahead.
Right.
I'm 6'3", so I feel for the dude.
Oh
per
my
se.
gosh. Yeah, I mean, I genuinely loved the man.
Now, how tall are you?
I'm 5'6".
Oh, wow. So you was like, come here, little dude.
Yeah, especially if I was wearing heels. Oh my gosh, he got
Oh,
such a complex.
I'm sure.
But
I'm
it was during my marriage to him that I was encouraged to try out to be a background extra in different movies and TV shows and stuff. And I went
okay.
in and filled out the application and did the headshot photo and everything. And I went on about my life. And you're supposed to call into these agencies to see if anything that they have matches you, to see if you could apply to be in that position. Well, instead, I'm the one that started getting the phone calls. I had such a unique look to me that immediately I was called to be on the TV show Alias with Jennifer Garner.
Yeah.
I was in the final season.
Wow.
They gave me full makeup, wardrobe, everything. Out of 140 something extras, they used me to be like a focal point in this episode to be able to help the camera transition as I carried a tray with martinis across the room. Loved the outfit so much that I own it to this day, by the way. So after that, the casting director liked me so much that he called me in to be part of Jack's Out TV crew on the final season of Will and Grace, back when Will and Grace was still on TV.
Okay. I'm familiar with both those shows.
Yeah. So I had a blast. I had so much fun doing this. And I started getting call after call after call because the casting director was telling people, hey, call this one. She's great. And my husband got really angry about it because he wasn't tall enough to really be an actor. And that's the whole reason he got into stunts, was trying to be an actor.
Right.
And he started accusing me of doing terrible things to be able to get the parts. And I walked away from what could have been a career and instead modeled for Harley Davidson.
So you walked away from the opportunity to stay married to make appease his ego.
Yeah.
Okay. I get it.
And instead modeled for Harley Davidson.
I'm sure that went over well too.
By that point, we had separated.
Okay. Well, you got one that doesn't want you in t-shirts and tank tops and hot shorts, and one that doesn't want you on TV and getting roles. And so, wow.
Right. I kept on going for these controlling, okay, let's be nice, idiots.
Assholes.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And if he hadn't been controlling, I genuinely did love that man. I probably would have remained married to him even to this day.
Okay.
But instead, I moved on with my life. And throughout the next 7 years, I remained in contact with this pen pal of mine who lived in Scotland. He was a great guy. He was a police officer. He had a little girl. I was watching the little girl grow up in videos and photos. We were having meals together. So when he was having breakfast, I was having dinner. And we would do this through Skype.
Yeah.
We would have these just heartfelt conversations, and we really got to know each other. Well, over the 7 years, I went to go and visit him. He came to visit me, and we decided that we were in love. So at the end of 7 years, he asked me to get a fiancé visa and move over there, marry him, and spend the rest of my life with him. I mean, after everything that I'd been through, I'd had magical experiences and I'd had really crappy experiences. And this man is asking me to move to another country and live in the land of kings and queens and castles. It was going to be my Cinderella fairy tale come true, right?
Absolutely.
This is what every little girl dreams of. Most of us want to deny it, but this is true.
Right. Okay. I got you. I'm there.
Yeah. So I got rid of my car and my apartment. I left my career. I was a director of public safety and security for 6 different properties in LA County at that point. I had worked my way up from the bottom. I had an actual career where I could afford to pay my bills and just got an $11,000 a year raise. And I left all of that to go be with him. After 7 years, it took him to get me there. It took him 7 days to start trafficking me.
Are you shitting me? Okay, so this is it kind of like the guy, the 52-hour dude that had your license and your ID? You were stuck?
It happened pretty quickly that way. We were on our way back to his house, and I'd known him for 7 years, so of course I trusted him with my life. He already knew everything that I'd been through.
Right.
So when he told me, I've got a lockbox at the house. Well, here, let me correct this. I've got a lockbox at the house. If you give me your passport and your driver's license and your credit cards, I'll make sure it all goes into that lockbox so that it all stays safe. Nobody can steal it that way.
Well, hey, we know why you got those acting parts, by the way. I'm just throwing that in. I'm just throwing that in, even though this is a serious story. That was. Hey, look, I watch a lot of British, television and mystery shows and those type of things. That was excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll explain why I have that here in a minute too.
Okay.
I am also a voice actress these days too, kind of
there
a
you go.
Little side thing. But it took him 7 days to start trafficking me, and I was being trafficked he was making money off of me, and he was making decent money off of me because I was seen as a luxury commodity and exotic. I had a voice from TV. I had a face from TV. He could show people on his TV where I had been on these programs. They wanted their own piece of Hollywood.
Wow.
So having that voice and that typical California accent, which to us is no accent at all, I started adopting just a little bit at a time, the Scottish accent, to try and kind of ruin that for him a bit. I was taking that away from him. I was still wearing my shorts and t-shirts from that first marriage.
Right.
I was not going to allow somebody to control everything that I was doing. And he was trying very hard to do that. And I was taking whatever tiny little pieces I could to get that back. He was a heavy drinker, especially when he was taking photos and videos of other people molesting or raping me. He would get really drunk and he would start dancing and parading around with his camera.
Oh my God.
It got to the point where I was starting to drink pretty heavily too, because I was looking for that blackout drunk moment. I didn't want to remember. Right. And I kept telling myself, if I drink enough, I won't remember. Except I never got to that point. Instead, I just had really wicked hangovers. I lost my sense of control so many nights. But there was one night in particular, not too long into this, where he had way too much to drink. And I conned him into giving me back my passport and my debit card. I told him that it was so that I could go to the bank and extract all of my money so I could give it to him, because it wouldn't do us any good sitting there in my bank. And if I gave it to him, then we would have money that we could spend on whatever we liked.
I like it. It worked.
In his drunken stupor, yeah, it worked. He gave me this stuff back and then didn't remember.
Oh, he didn't remember?
He didn't remember because he'd had too much alcohol, so he didn't ask for it back. So I hid it, and I couldn't hide it where I would normally hide things, in the bottom of a dresser drawer or something like that. I had to hide it wrapped up inside of the bath towel, hanging over the rack in the bathroom. And if that bath towel had been so much as bumped, it would have fallen out. So I was breathless for days, hoping he didn't find it.
Right.
I used my debit card to purchase the first flight home that I could afford. Now, the first flight home was for the very next day, and it was like $5,000. There was no way I could afford that.
God.
And the next day, it was like $4,000. And, the further out you go, the more the price kind of drops a bit. It's 5 days out. There was a flight I could finally afford. It was a little over $2,000. And I used almost every penny. I think I had something like $4 left in my account after that purchase to be able to get that flight. And it was worth every penny.
Absolutely.
Except I got a kidney infection because of the abuse and I didn't make the flight.
You're kidding me.
Yeah.
Wow.
Directly because of the abuse from a couple, man and woman, I ended up with a severe kidney infection that was passed along. And I ended up so bad that I think I ended up in the hospital, but I'm not sure. I do remember talking to a doctor, and I do remember being on antibiotics. And I remember being in a building that might have been a hospital or a clinic, but I'm not clear on it.
Did
I
he
was
take
in.
you, or you're on your own at this point?
He took me.
Okay.
His sister forced him to. So while his family did live close by, and they were aware when I was sick, and they did come over and hang out when he was there sometimes, they had no idea what was going on behind closed doors. He had always been a, quote, private person in his life and didn't appreciate people intruding at all.
Right.
And they knew this. So they left him to himself, and they didn't pester me very much. And I wish they would have, maybe a little bit more. But I was scared. I was scared. I nearly committed suicide in Scotland, and hey, I've been successful at everything else, so it's about time I failed at something, right? So less than 2% of all survivors of human trafficking get out with their life.
Less than 2% get out with their life. Victims.
Most of them are beaten to death. They take a drug overdose. They commit suicide. There's a lot of ways out that can happen in a short amount of time. And I nearly took the suicide route with a train. But I didn't because of a small child. And I go into a lot of details about this in my autobiography, Custom Justice.
Okay. Do you have a picture of that one? Do you have a picture of that book?
I do. It fell over. There it is.
Holy jokes. It's a great looking book. And it's huge. I love it.
It is 350 pages. It was all written in a matter of 1 month.
Are you kidding me?
We'll get to that in a little bit, but when it was time, it all came out.
Okay.
So I was still trying to figure out a way out of Scotland, and I ended up conning him again. Because I had started studying psychology on my own as that 18-year-old kid, this was something that I had just studied for years at that point. And I knew what Stockholm Syndrome was. It has recently been rebranded as trauma bonding.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
Right. And that's because Stockholm Syndrome was originally called that because a group of hostages started to have compassion towards their kidnappers in Stockholm Syndrome. Sweden.
Yeah, I'm familiar. Yes.
Yeah. So now it's called trauma bonding in psychology circles. I didn't know that until the last couple of years myself. But I thought trauma bonding was where you go through traumas together and you bond because of that. So it seems misleading, but trauma bonding is what Stockholm Syndrome used to be. I told him, the date that you and I were supposed to get married has come and gone now, and we're not married. And my visa is going to be expiring not too long from now, another month or so. And if I stay here in the country, if they find out, they'll kick me out of the country and I'll never be allowed back. And I mean, that would be terrible, wouldn't it? And you're a police officer, and you
I forgot you said this dude was a police officer. I forgot. That is so critical to your story. Okay, I'm sorry. I just had a bang moment. But yeah, go ahead.
So I told him, I said, you could lose your job if anybody finds out that I'm here beyond my visa. And that would be terrible. We wouldn't want that, would we? No. Within 2 hours, he had purchased round-trip tickets for me to get out of Scotland, go back to California, and return in time for my birthday.
God, you're going to celebrate your birthday by sharing you with everybody.
Right. Like I was going to use that ticket to ever go back. The most heartbreaking thing about leaving there was leaving his little girl behind. She was 12, just turned 13 when I left. I loved that child to pieces. She was amazing, and I hope she's okay.
Was she there every day, or was she just like this parent thing sometimes, with her mom? Okay.
Yeah, he had every other weekend visitation with her, which meant that I had every other weekend time off.
Ugh.
He would traffic me 5, 6, 7 times a week, several times a day when he wasn't at work as a police officer. It was brutal. It was a horrible life. It's no wonder I tried to take the easy way out, right?
Yeah. How long were you there? You said the visa was for 6 months. Were you there 6 months?
5.
5 months.
152 days.
Oh,
It took a lot to be able to convince him to send me home. But once I finally planted that seed, I made him believe that it was his idea, and that was the only trick to getting out of there.
right.
I couldn't have asked for help while I was there because, of course, he was the police, and
Mhm.
his customers who were coming over were policemen and lawyers and judges and people that he knew from work. Who could I turn to? They knew. They
Yeah.
participated. So I got back to the States and I was trying to rebuild my life. I got a job working for a friend of mine that I had known for about 14 years. It was actually on his computer that I used Hot or Not and met this guy in the first place.
Wow.
But it was also through his computer that he got an email that included photos of videos of me being raped and molested. And the caption at the bottom of it was, "I wouldn't want this in my life, would you?" And we knew who it was. But this friend of mine, male friend, looked at me with new eyes that day because he assumed, because of what he was seeing, he
Mhm.
assumed that it was all by choice. And he said,
Really?
"I didn't know you were into this kind of stuff, but you could have told me. We can set something up that for us right now."
Oh my God.
I was done. It drove such a wedge in our friendship that I will never speak to this person again.
Oh my God. He's just like, oh, let's go. You're open to this? I
Yep.
can be an asshole too.
Right. And I tried to tell him this wasn't my choice. This wasn't things I wanted to do. "Oh, I know you've always been kinky." That is the wrong thing to say to anybody that has been a survivor of sexual assault of any kind. It's just evil. So that my best friend at the time, she also got an email. And she couldn't understand how anything like this could ever exist without it being consensual. So she started telling people that I had been a high-priced call girl. And I lost my best friend. So even while he was still back in Scotland, he was finding ways of isolating me.
Right.
He was still abusing me.
Mm-hmm.
I went from one job to the next. I finally ended up working for a friend of mine. And I told him before I ever started there, "Michael, this is what's happening right now. If you get an email, please delete it." And of course, he got the email.
Wow.
And he deleted it.
Did
And I
he?
continued working for him for a long time. He was a great guy. But during that time, I was also taking jujitsu, Wing Chun, and Taekwondo every week.
New husband, look out, boy. I'm gonna whoop that ass. I'm gonna whoop that ass. Don't start none, won't be none.
Oh my gosh. I had to learn how to fight back, you know?
Absolutely.
After everything I'd been through. And fighting back, by the way, is more than just with fists. It's more than physical. I didn't realize it, but I was fighting back when I was still trying to figure out how to emotionally manipulate him into letting me leave. I
Absolutely,
was,
that's a fight. Good for you.
yeah.
All right. So I'm not gonna let you finish the story because I believe that since you're still married, that this one's gotta be the right one. So I want to talk about that as a totally different interview about how you transitioned. You were working. We'll pick up working for this guy Michael, and for so many years, and then at some point you met your current husband. So we'll pick up there, but we're not done. We're just going to pick up there, okay? If that's cool with you. So
Okay.
here's what I want to know for my family, for men and women in the community. How do they spot the signs of danger? I mean, some of the ones that you pointed out, I don't know how you would have spotted that. And then what to do about it, or how to protect yourself, not necessarily with the jujitsu, but if that's part of it, that's part of it. But so let's go with the first question. How do they spot all of these different signs of trafficking, of danger, of all of these things that you've mentioned? How do they do that?
Well, as we established early on, it's usually people who have a sense of authority over somebody's life already, right?
Okay.
So what you're looking for is the same signs that you would look for in a domestic violence situation. Those are going to be the first indicators. If there seems to be controlling and manipulative behavior, if there's bruising, if there's a sense of isolation where this person is being separated from their friends, from their family, this is what the controlling people are going to do in order to try to manipulate them into becoming a trafficking victim. When they do start in trafficking, a lot of times you're going to start seeing an increase in things like drug and alcohol abuse. You're going to see, because of this, personality changes that are even more drastic than somebody who's entered into a domestic violence situation.
Okay.
It progresses in such a way that eventually the person that you knew no longer exists. And unless they get out, they may never again.
So age 4, nothing you can do. Right. When was the first age you feel like you could have done something, knowing what you know now? So knowing what you know now, if you were talking to someone else, and maybe not 4, but maybe it's 12. I don't know. At what age do you feel like something could be done?
Honestly, I would say 39 years old.
Okay. And what do you mean by that?
So many people live with the intense, incredible amount of self-blame and guilt that when you are mired down in those emotions, you don't know that there's options available to you. And if you don't know that those options exist, it's the same as them not existing.
Wow.
I had no possibility of being able to fight back for myself because I didn't know that was an option.
Right. So you know it's an option now. What would you advise others to understand how to identify the options to fight? You know, when you're 12, the natural answer I would expect you to say is you got to tell somebody if you're feeling controlled, if you're being touched, if you're being molested, if you're being trafficked, you know, but in your scenario, or your story or any other story, if you're being trafficked by a parent, like you said, a loved one, who do you tell?
In those situations, it's important to, and I outline this in my book series, Growth from Darkness. Okay. It's important to figure out who your safe people are that you're going to talk to. So I guide people to write down a list of names of people that they know, and then write down a column of pros and a column of cons, and mark out what it is that you think would be a pro to being able to speak with this person or a con to speaking with this person. Write them all down. Figure out who the safe person is. If you're a child under the age of 18, it's important also to recognize that your safe people are not other kids. Telling other kids what's happening to you is feeding their fire, because children love drama. What's more, we have an innate need in us to make other people feel how we have been made to feel by them. Right. So when we tell a traumatic story to another child, this other child is going to immediately look for the comparison. Oh, that's okay. I've had XYZ happen to me. Right. And you're not finding solutions.
Yeah, that's just not kids. Adults do that shit too.
Right. We all do. Maybe to a lesser degree if we are healed from our own traumas as adults. Right. But yeah, it's.
So let me ask you this based on that answer. So the guy that was your friend, I think, did you say for 14 years he was your friend? Okay, but that dude would have made the list, wouldn't he? Before he got that email, wouldn't he have made the safe list? Or wouldn't he?
Looking back, I don't think he would have.
Okay.
I think there would have been more cons in that list of he wanted to get me into a relationship. He tried multiple times. I had dated him in the past and didn't see him as an appropriate option for me. He was too closely tied to who I was in physical relationships for me to see him as somebody I could talk to about other physical relationships.
Okay. Because that was one of the big shockers. You're like, wait a minute, what, bro? Wait a minute, what?
Right. But that best friend should have been a safe person that I could have gone to.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I recognize now, looking back, now that I know what I know, is that she had a lot of unhealed trauma of her own. And people with unhealed trauma try to manipulate others to remain unhealed themselves because it's more recognizable for you to be in that broken place together.
Yeah, well, simply stated, misery loves company. So if
Right.
I'm hurting and messed up, then you need to stay hurting and messed up so we can be hurt and messed up together.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. My heart's broken, but I'm happy for you. But it's so and this is not about me, so let me get off that subject. But I just you want to go beat somebody's ass and you just don't know whose ass to go beat. But somebody needs to get beat. Jesus.
Well, and keep in mind that a happy ending depends on where you stop telling the story.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely a happy ending in this story. And I know we're going to get to that again, but
You want to share the happy ending? Go ahead. You can share it if you want to share it, because I need, at this point, I need to boost myself.
All right. I will leave it very brief.
Okay. No, it don't have to be brief. I just was like excited to hear about this great story in a whole different podcast. But you know what? I need it. We're not going to end until you're done. You could take another 45 minutes and I'm listening. Okay.
I think we should do both.
All right.
I'll
We'll
give
do
you
both.
kind of the highlights of the happy ending.
Okay.
And then we'll get into the details of it next time.
All right. Because you know why? Because everybody thinks, not everybody, a lot of people think, and I'm going to say women, even though it might be sexist, but, because men feel like they have more control and more options, and women are obviously, and first of all, men aren't as picky. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. Women should be picky, obviously, right? And so should men when you're trying to get in an amazing relationship. But so many people think that there's nobody out there for them. So tell me. Look.
You're adorable. So I went through a lot of therapy and stuff for a while.
Okay.
And in December of 2020, my therapist asked me, "What's next for you? I don't think there's much else I can do to help you." And I said, "I think I'm going to write my book." And she checked in with me a month later and she said, "How's it going? How's your book coming?" I said, "I'm done." She said, "What?" So I'm leaving a lot of details out here.
That's okay.
June 19th of 2021 was my 10-year anniversary of freedom from human trafficking. That was the day that my book was published. The next month is when I met the man that is now my husband. If I had not been willing to do all of the hard work on myself, including the therapy and writing about everything and art and a sense of community, I wouldn't have the marriage that I have now. And he is the most patient, kind, loving, gentle person I could have ever had in my life. And God knew that he was exactly the man I needed.
Oh, amen and amen. That is awesome. Now, how did you meet him though? So you finished the book and a month later you met him. What were you peddling the book? And he said, "What do you got?" or what?
Ironically enough, I met him on another dating website called Plenty of Fish. And it was the same dating website that What's-His-Face was using to traffic me on when I was in Scotland.
And you felt like you were cool. You weren't like gun shy. You really were him.
Terribly gun shy. I was horrified, scared out of my mind, but I also knew to listen. And I knew that if I was going to conquer my fears, this was a good place to start.
Okay. And you did that. So you're listening to your head, to your heart, to the spirit, to the person's words, or you're listening to all those, or to what?
All of those, but I was also paying close attention to his actions.
To his actions, his words and his actions.
He can say whatever he wants, but if he doesn't back it up with doing what he says he's going to do, that's not a good person.
And you're not giving him your driver's license or passport.
And he's never asked for them.
Smart man. What a story. What a sharing. What insights. And, I'm grateful that God has carried you and kept you. And when I read your bio and your information, you talked about the ability that you have to infuse humor into your story, because it is such a difficult story to talk about and share. And if the listeners didn't pick up all the humor, they're missing something. So I am super grateful that you took some time to spend with us and spend with me and our community. If for those listeners, I have posted a link. It is growthfromdarkness.com, and you can go there and you can find out the story and the triumph, as well as hire a potential stage speaker and presenter, author. So I encourage all of you to go check it out, to share it. I have sister and niece and nieces and cousins and our entire community that I am going to push this podcast out to every one of them, even if I have to do it on my own personal text messaging, because this is the type of story that people need to hear and understand that you can, I don't want to say innocently, but you can naively get yourself into a situation that if it's 23 hours, if it's 52 hours, or what did you say, 150, how many days?
152 days.
152 days and so many hours of trauma that you don't want to experience. And if you can learn from someone else, by all means, that is the method and the madness to avoid that, as far as I'm concerned. Any last parting thoughts, words, or insights that you want to share with us? And we're going to have you back, so don't think I'm not going to have you back. We're going to talk about the relationship part, though.
Parting words would be, stop giving credit to your abusers. Your trauma and what you went through did not make you stronger. You were already strong. You just need to dig deep and find that strength within yourself.
Excellent. Have you ever done like life coaching? I know you've done therapy. Have you done life coaching? Because you sound like you've done all of it successfully.
I haven't gotten quite that far yet. I've had a lot of people tell me that I need to.
I'm not saying you need to. I'm saying that it sounded like you had some and that you've come. But if you need to, we have plenty of people in our community that we would refer to you. If you say that that's a need, that we believe are really good at those type of things. And
oh no, I was saying people keep telling me I need to be one.
Oh, you need to be. Well, that's what I'm saying. It didn't sound like you needed one. It sounded like you needed to be one. So. But hey, listen, you can't go with what other people think that you need to do, be, or say, because you got that under control. And I love your story and your purpose and your drive and the fact that you're sharing your story with the world, no matter how traumatic it is. But hopefully it's healing somewhat too, knowing that there's hopefully millions of people that are going to hear this, between myself and other podcasters and videocasters that are sharing your story.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed being with you today and hanging out.
I enjoyed it. I'm honored. Stay right there. I'm going to close out the show, and I'm going to come back and say hi to you. Okay, so hold on one second. All right, folks, you heard it. Amanda Blackwood. Man, if you aren't moved by her story, nothing's going to move you. If you have women in your life, if you have people in your life, because it's not just limited to women, there's young men and that also have traumatic situations. So we're asking you to like and share this. There's algorithms to this madness. When you like and share the videos, more people get to see them, and the more people that see them, the more people that get healed. And we'll also ask that you subscribe to the channel as we look to continuously bring more and more high-level 24K style information into your mobile devices on hand. Hey, I'm Derick Gant. I want you to be your best, bring your best, and start living now.